Hi folks, I'm Matt and welcome to My Expanded Universe, a show where I go through the entire EU in chronological order as best. Let me hear you say it. I know how. Good job. All right folks, today we're just going to cover one brief, short little comic book story from Star Wars Tales number 3. It's called Lady Luck. It was written by Rich Hanley and Darko Macon, and this one, it tells the tale of how Lando became the Baron Administrator of Cloud City. What? How would they take such a huge, enormous story and put it in a 16-page comic book and tales? That's weird, isn't it? Well, I actually got to talk to Rich Hanley about this particular story, and he said it was something that him and Darko just pitched to Lucasfilm. Rich said that he imagined a Casino Royale type of deal, that, you know, Lando's there. He remembers reading from the West End Games material that Lando got help winning at Sabacc, winning the hand and getting the title to the Cloud City from the former Baron. And so he just imagined, okay, I want to tell that story. Amazing that it got approved, folks. This is something that impacts, well, I say impacts, it basically explains something from the movie, right? How does Lando, a scoundrel, become the Baron Administrator of this huge operation? When you think about it, that's kind of wild. Now, I was still getting the single issues of Star Wars Tales. I hadn't stopped at this point. In fact, at this point, I was okay on it, but this is one of them I really loved, and it's basically because I love Lando. I love Lando. He's a great character. And Rich Hanley particularly has written several short stories about Lando Calrissian. This is the first one I'm mentioning. And I asked him, I said, is it because Lucasfilm told you, hey, you're our Lando guy, come up with a Lando story? Or are you someone who loves Lando? He said he loves Lando. Loves him because Lando can be kind of a little of a villain, but he's also a good guy. But he kind of sits in that gray area, and he loves that about Lando Calrissian, and I do too, which is, I think, what we have in common here. But anyway, this little short story actually tells a lot. It's one of the best Tales stories in the entire run. There's very few Tales stories that I really love. As you know, a lot of times, folks, I get on here and I tell you this Tales story is totally forgettable, totally passable. You don't have to read it. This one is actually pretty good. Now, in it, the artist actually does, it's a little inside joke here, but on one of the panels is Hellboy. Hellboy is another comic book character from Dark Horse Comics. They thought it would be funny since, you know, Dark Horse owned the rights for Star Wars back then to kind of put Hellboy in the background. It's not called Hellboy, but you can obviously see it is Hellboy in the background. Now, that's just something the artist did on his own just to kind of throw it in there. But isn't it kind of weird? Could Hellboy be part of the Star Wars universe? Nah. Now, another neat thing that Rich told me about this short story is that he included his daughter's name. He just kind of switched some of the letters up, but put her in it, kind of a simile of her name, which I thought was really neat. And I'm sure a lot of authors have done that, and I've just never noticed. But he talked about having to get to, this is one of the first comic books he got to write because he's always wanted to write comics, but he didn't have a chance. They didn't have any openings. And Darko Macon also wrote Vader's Quest, something that I'll be covering in the near future, maybe 6 months from now, who knows. But anyway, Vader's Quest, Darko had Rich proofread it to see if there was any continuity errors or anything that they need to change. And that's how they became friends. And so that was Rich's in to get in to write this story. That's why it's co-written by both of them. He said, hey, would you like to write a comic book story together? You know, because basically you can get into a party if your friend has an invite and maybe you say, I'm with him. It's sort of like that kind of deal. But that's how he got into writing this comic book because that's something he'd always wanted to do. Anyway, rambling again. But Rich was telling me that's how he got in. Now, the cool thing about this is he also told me this connects to some of his other short stories that he's told in the Star Wars Expanded Universe. Now, I haven't gotten to those, but when I review them, well, I can go and tell you they're Idiot's Array and Crimson Bounty. They all have some connections. And we started talking about continuity because, as you know, I'm a big fan of continuity. It seems like every author wanted to do that. He provided me with tons of great continuity things that are in the books and stories from authors writing those books that I can't wait to share with you when I get to those stories. But folks, remember what I kept saying. One of the reasons we loved the Expanded Universe was because of that continuity, right? We loved it for those. We loved it for those various connections. But did you know, on the other end, the writers were 100% conscious of who was out there reading their stuff and appreciated it, and it was something that they gave to them. This is something you don't see, or I haven't heard that you've seen in the new material. You don't see this type of dedication to the fans. For instance, I told you Ryder Wenham's little children's books that were from a children's book club, or that when writing a comic book for the Star Wars Kids magazine, he put little continuity connections in there because he knew that some grown man was going to purchase them. He said, there's going to be some fan who's going to purchase, they're going to hunt down all the little Star Wars Kids magazines, they're going to read these comic books, so I need to make sure I don't make any continuity errors. Who thinks like that? Supposedly every author in the EU did. And that was one of the reasons we loved it so much, right? Because they respected every fan. Now, they didn't put so much detail in there to where if you read it, you would miss it. Remember, I told you a lot of these stories are self-contained. You can definitely read Lady Luck and not know that they're connecting to two other stories. You can definitely do that. In fact, most people read that and think it was a story in and on its own. And that's fine. The author's fine with that. But for the people who really dig into the expanded universe, and when they see connections like that, like me, they'll read it and go, whoa, look who it is. It's so-and-so from the last short story, or this or that. That is really interesting to know that the authors had them in mind. Who else does that? Do they do that today? Do they do this for the new novels? I don't know. I'm asking. I doubt they do. I doubt they think about those fans anymore. So it was, again, the uniqueness of the expanded universe as I see it. There is so much that the authors, A.C. Crispin, for her Han Solo trilogy, Rich told me that A.C. was worried about, she had written something, said, actually that story's already been told. She's like, oh no, well I need to make sure it conforms to this story because I don't want to disappoint the fans. She cared more about the fans than getting a paycheck or writing a Star Wars book. It's like, I want to do the fans justice. And she did. A ton of you have told me you love those books better than Brian Daley. Good for you. I love them too. Okay? But they're awesome books. But you know why? Maybe it's in the back of your head, not merely the characters or not merely the story. It's because she cared about you, the fans. And you can tell that in the writing. Phenomenal, phenomenal. Okay, I've gotten way off the subject here. Anyway, folks, that is all the time I have for now. I'll see you next time with another video.